I've spent some time talking about how there was a push to create a taxpayer-funded religious charter school in Oklahoma. And in case you forgot, that was passed by like the Oklahoma Charter School Board. They said yes to a Catholic school that would receive taxpayer dollars. And they got sued over that. The Attorney General of Oklahoma sued them over it. And the Oklahoma Supreme Court said you absolutely cannot use taxpayer dollars to open up a religious school, and they shot that down. They sued, they took it to they appealed. It went all the way up to the US Supreme Court, and Amy Coney Barrett said, I kind of know people who are involved in this case, so I'm going to recuse myself. And the rest of the court was deadlocked 4-4. And so for now, taxpayer money cannot be used to open up a religious charter school. Now, I think last week I talked about how in Oklahoma, once again, there was a Jewish group that was trying to open up a religious charter school. And because they want to try again, they want another case to get back up to the Supreme Court. And maybe this time, Amy Coney Barrett will not have to recuse herself. But I want to draw your attention to something that is happening right now in Tennessee, which is that there is a proposed Christian charter school in Tennessee, and they are suing the Knox County Board of Education for not giving them public money and allowing them to become a public religious charter school, even though that's a totally illegal thing. So, according to the lawsuit, which was filed like on November 30th, very recently, there is a group called the Wilberforce Academy of Knoxville. And William Wilberforce was like a British abolitionist who fought against slavery hundreds of years ago, named after him. Christians loved this guy. But the Wilberforce Academy said they wanted to launch a charter school for kids in grades kindergarten through 8th grade. And their plan is for this school to open in the fall of 2027. And they made clear to officials that their main goal is not to educate children in any meaningful way, but they want to indoctrinate kids. Let me show you this from a lawsuit they later filed. I don't know if you could see this. I hope you can over here. Christ serves as the cornerstone of Wilberforce Academy's mission, guiding the formation of students who are academically prepared, spiritually grounded, and equipped to lead lives of purpose. Wilberforce exists so that students can come to a saving faith in Jesus Christ, grow in a personal relationship with him, and be equipped to make him known wherever God leads them. Okay, so no math, no science. We're not going to teach kids how to read. Like, the main goal of this school is to make sure they are converted to Christianity, because their religious base is solid if they decide when they're 6 years old that they are born again. So this is the school. And they say their charter affirms the truth of the Apostles' Creed and the inerrancy and infallibility of the Holy Bible. And this is the funniest / saddest part of this entire thing. They also say this in their lawsuit right here. Wilberforce Academy believes that explicit Christian instruction and practice are critical to a good education, and that a purely secular education is necessarily an inferior one. But and I'm going to stop there for now. It's like just trashing every public school that exists, basically. So this is the school. This is what they want to launch. And they say in the lawsuit that all teachers at this school would have to share their fundamentalist beliefs. So no Jews, no atheists, no Muslims, no gay people, etc., would be hired on staff. Now, the reason they're filing this lawsuit is that they say Tennessee law prevents us from getting taxpayer dollars to open up our doors. Because according to the law, let me show you this. This is part of Tennessee law right here, Tennessee code. But look at this. A public charter school shall, at a minimum, operate as a public, non-sectarian, non-religious public school. Yeah, that's how charter schools work. They should be public. They should not be religious at all. And the law also has this section in it right over here, which says the group that is sponsoring a charter school, the law has to make sure they do not promote the agenda of any religious denomination or religiously affiliated entity. So not only is the school supposed to be sectarian, the organization that's sponsoring the school has to be secular in nature as well, because the whole point of this is that it's going to be a public school. And so all of that makes perfect sense. Taxpayer dollars should not be used to advance religion or atheism, for what it's worth. That's in the Constitution. Courts have repeatedly affirmed this. And even in recent years, when the US Supreme Court has chipped away at separation of church and state, all of that has still held true. But the lawsuit says that when the people behind Wilberforce Academy filed the paperwork to launch their place, check this out. They wanted to file the paperwork to make this happen. But look at this. Number 44. That letter, which must be submitted on the state's form, makes clear that Wilberforce cannot and will not be allowed to open or apply to open a charter school. So Wilberforce's letter had to admit that it does not meet the requirements because it does promote the agenda of any religious denomination or religiously affiliated entity. This school is complaining because they're like, we have to fill out paperwork so we could apply to become a charter school. But like, the paperwork says we're not allowed to apply. Yeah, because you don't fit the rules. This is not persecution here. The reason they're suing, they're saying, is we need the court to step in and say Tennessee law is illegal. You cannot restrict charter schools to only non-religious, non-sectarian schools. And the lawsuit says Wilberforce Academy is able and ready to apply for charter status as soon as a court orders the Knox County Public Schools to stop discriminating against religious schools and their sponsors. Like, there is no discrimination happening here. It's ridiculous. There is good reason for public dollars to support public education. And by the way, public education is not pro-atheist education, no matter what God's Not Dead tells you, right? And the academy, this Wilberforce Academy, they point out that, you guys, if we file to become a charter school right now, we're going to be in so much trouble because of the law. Look at number 47 here. Wilberforce Academy's right to operate and apply to operate a religious charter school cannot be secure until it wins judicial relief. National secularist groups like the Freedom from Religion Foundation, Americans United for the Separation of Church and State, and the ACLU are committed to bringing legal challenges to any religious charter school that gets approved or opens its doors. Without judicial confirmation of its rights, no religious charter school can safely apply, open, or operate without an inevitable lawsuit by outside groups or a cutoff of funding by the state. To which I say, yeah, that's kind of how the law works. Like, you don't get to complain, you're like, it's like a child going to an amusement park and saying, this thing says I got to be 48 inches to ride this ride. Well, unless the court step in, I, at 42 inches, cannot get on this ride. How dare they exclude me? It's like, the rules are there for everyone's safety. That's why it's there. Like, if you don't fit the description, you shouldn't be applying. And if you want to open a private religious school, which is clearly what these people want to do, then go do it. There is no law that says you are owed tax dollars because of your religion. Isn't that the theme of today, from that Oklahoma essay writer girl to this, which is there are Christians who believe they are owed whatever it is they want. And if the rules are applied to them and it hurts them, it's always persecution and not just, no, that's what the rules are and you didn't listen. Like, yeah, they can't open up. Religious charter schools should not exist. They cannot legally exist. And as I've said so many times before, public money should never be siphoned into religious projects that explicitly don't fulfill the obligations that public schools have, such as non-discrimination, professional standards, a curriculum grounded in fact and not dogma. This is not about school choice. This is a deliberate attempt to tear down the wall between separation of church and state. So this lawsuit tries to argue that there's nothing wrong with taxpayer dollars going to religious schools. In fact, the lawyers say Tennessee has a voucher program and they allow public dollars to go to private religious schools. But that's not a fair comparison because the law, when it comes to charter schools, says a private school cannot become a charter school. Like the voucher law says you can use this money to attend whatever school you want. And if that's a private school, so be it. And that's why the US Supreme Court said if you're allowing people to use it as at a private school, you can't say no to a private religious school. And they opened that door a little bit. But when it comes to charter schools, it's not like other private schools can suddenly become a charter school while maintaining whatever it is that kept them private. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. So again, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't get what they're trying to argue there. It doesn't make any sense. And if a court was ever dumb enough to open that door and allow taxpayer dollars to fund religious schools, it would destroy public education in this country. Because every private Christian school in the country would suddenly decide to become a charter school and steal that sweet, sweet taxpayer public school money. Because what do conservative Christians want to do? They want to destroy public education. So there's another aspect of this that I want to share with you, which is that the lawyers for this lawsuit, the ones defending the Christian school, it's a small law firm called Consovoy McCarthy. And the reason they are relevant in this story is because CNN wrote about them last year. Here's the headline from CNN. This small conservative law firm is landing big wins at the Supreme Court. And specifically, the lawyers at Consovoy McCarthy have argued 11 appeals at the Supreme Court, including a landmark case in 2023 that ended affirmative action in college admissions. So just a bunch of white supremacists, even though they would never use that term to describe themselves. 5 of its current 9 partners clerked for conservative Justice Clarence Thomas, the biggest white supremacist of them all. Like, that's the people they're using to file this lawsuit. That's the legal company they are using here, which just seems relevant. There was a local news outlet that pointed out the same law firm wrote to the Supreme Court back in Oklahoma when that Catholic charter school was trying to get taxpayer dollars. Consovoy McCarthy wrote a letter on behalf of former Republican Oklahoma attorneys general saying, hey, Supreme Court, you should totally allow this to happen. And it didn't work. And now they're trying this in Tennessee. So I don't know where this lawsuit's going to go. I don't really know that they have a case because it's not like they submitted an application and even got rejected. So right now, church-state separation groups haven't even gotten involved in this. But one news outlet did get a very interesting reaction from a Knox County Board of Education member. And check this out. We received the following general comment from board member Stephen Triplett, about the lawsuit. As a Christian, my hope is that more students in our community come to know Jesus as their Savior and Lord. This is the dude who's on the board of the public school system. That matters more to me than anything else. I will always support the advancement of the gospel. If the board takes a vote on this school, I will recuse myself from voting due to personal ties to the school's founders. Yet even still, I will always support Christ in the public square. Like, thanks, we weren't asking about that. And like, can you try doing your job? But okay, good on that guy for saying he's going to recuse himself. He has no business being on a public school board. But the thing is, other board members are well within their rights to reject this school. It's not even complicated. Some charter schools are just bad ideas. And some, like this one, are bad ideas and flat out illegal. Christians are not owed their own taxpayer-funded schools just because they feel like indoctrinating kids with other people's money. I want to point out that the Knoxville News Sentinel pointed out there were a couple other issues with the application that they wanted to fill out. Check this out. While Wilberforce's dispute seemingly is with the state because they don't like the law, the nonprofit chose to sue the Knox County Board of Education. The nonprofit filed organizational paperwork with the state on November 21st under a registered agent who is a West Knoxville attorney who could not immediately be reached for comment, but the paperwork filed listed the organization's religious type as non-religious. Like, do any of these people know what they're doing? It's very strange. Okay, last thing I want to say about this. There's one other element that could go somewhere here, which is that Wilberforce Academy, as I mentioned earlier, they say that a purely secular education is necessarily an inferior one. But they say, if you don't allow us to open up our religious charter school, we still want to open up a secular one. But they say the law doesn't allow that because the sponsoring group is still a religious group. And they say, in our view, providing a good non-religious education would still glorify God by preparing students' hearts and minds to serve God, though in a lesser way that falls short of a proper, explicitly Christian education. And here's the thing. That may be the opening that they need. Because when everything else they're saying points to how Christian they want to make this school, it's kind of hard to believe that they could open up a secular school without bringing religion into it. But I am worried that if they're blocked from starting a secular charter school because they are religious, I do wonder if that case would have any legal heft. I don't know. But in any case, religious charter schools are not about school choice. They are nothing more than a Trojan horse to destroy church-state separation and public education. That's why government approval, that's why these people want government approval to open a school that openly rejects non-believing teachers, that evangelizes students, and just reshapes the whole curriculum around a conservative Christian point of view. And they think they are owed taxpayer dollars to do this. That cannot become the new normal. That's why courts have to reject this strategy, not just because the law requires it, but because the stakes are really high, right? Public schools are supposed to be for everybody, and charter schools are meant to preserve that tradition. And Wilberforce proudly rejects that cause. Like, they want to indoctrinate kids, and they think taxpayers should foot the bill for it. And if the courts fail on this one, if this lawsuit gets anywhere, the ramifications are going to ripple well beyond Knoxville. So keep an eye out on this case. It's a scary one, but it's still very early. I will stop there here. What questions we got here? Where the hell are the atheist STEM-focused charter schools at? You know what? I will tell you this. There have been one or two attempts at starting pro-atheist STEM-focused charter schools. And in general, there's just not a lot of support for them. One, because it's really hard to run a good charter school. And two, most of the atheists, I mean, generally speaking here, most atheists want to support good public schools. They don't want to create alternatives to public schools that are focused on what? Math or science? Guess what? There are plenty of public schools that focus on math and science. And if your kid is good at math or science, you can take extra classes or higher level classes for them. So most atheists are not in the business of saying public schools suck, let's create a secular alternative. No, they want to support and elevate good public schools. That's why you don't see a lot of pro-atheist STEM-focused charter schools. The desire just isn't there, as opposed to conservative Christians who can't handle being around other people who are not like fully indoctrinated. So they got to create their own little bubble so they feel normal. So is that one college junior in Oklahoma going to be their new teacher? At this rate, it's the only job she's going to be able to find that is not working for a right-wing media outlet. She wants to be the next Riley Gaines. So at some point, she's going to be looking for a job. She's not going to be a pro tennis player, apparently.